The meeting is now recording, and I will now take the sederunt for the meeting of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee of the 28th of April 2021, bearing in mind that at 12 noon that there will be a minute's silence in recognition of Workers' Memorial Day. So I'll start with the sederunt. Councillor Allison.
Yeah.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Bradley is here. Councillor Anderson. Nothing from Councillor Anderson. Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Callaghan is here. Councillor Carmichael, are you substituting at this meeting, Councillor Carmichael?
Just observing.
Thank you. Councillor Chalmers, I see that you're here. Councillor Convery, you're also here. Councillor Craig is here. Councillor Devlin is here. Councillor Dorman is here. Councillor Fagan, you are also here. Councillor Faulkner is here. Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Harrow is here. Councillor Lockhart, I see that you're also here. Councillor Logan.
Present, I'm here.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Loudon.
I'm here.
Have apologies from Councillor Lowe. Councillor McAdams.
I'm here, Pauline.
Okay. Apologies from Councillor McGuigan. Councillor Miller, I see that you're here. Chair, I'm just going to stop at this point in the sederunt because we are going to observe a minute's silence. So if you just bear with me, I'll let you know when the minute's silence is about to commence, and we'll just take that time to pay our respects in terms of Workers' Memorial Day.
Thank you, Pauline.
If we could just commence our minute's silence now, thank you. Chair, that concludes the minute's silence. With your permission, Chair, I'll just continue to take the sederunt. Councillor Miller is here. Councillor Nealon.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Ross is here. Councillor Shearer.
Here.
Councillor Wardhaw is also here. Councillor Wark is here. And Councillor Wilson is here. Substituting today, I'm only aware of Councillor Horsham.
I'm here, Pauline.
Thank you. And there are a number of officers who are also attending the meeting. So with your permission, I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Pauline, just to say, I've joined the meeting just slightly later than probably you're doing the sederunt.
Thank you very much. I have now marked your attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. You're muted, John.
Sorry about that. There's always somebody that does it. They put it on so there would be no background noise during the minute's silence, and then forgot to take it off. Listen, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this meeting. My apologies that the other meeting ran on so long, but thanks very much for your patience. Declarations of interest, are there any? I don't see any hands up. We move on to item 2, which is minutes of previous meeting, pages 3 to 10. Is there any questions or comments on the previous minutes? Again, I see no hands raised. I would move the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second, Chair.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thanks very much. Now move on to items for decision. Item 3, Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Action Plan, which is in pages 11 to 34. And I would invite Leslie Hinshelwood to speak on this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of today's report is to seek approval of the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Action Plan for 21-22. A bit of background about the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy. It was approved in December 2017 and covers a 5-year period through to March 2022. This will be the last action plan of this current strategy, as we're currently reviewing the next Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy. In section 4, the action plan has been agreed with relevant services across the council, and we do this using the framework that's set within the strategy and can be found at Appendix 1. The action plan has been divided into key themes as outlined in 3.1. These themes are sustainable council, sustainable environment and sustainable communities. And within each of these themes, we have performance measures and providing information on how well the council are doing against each of the strategic outcomes. And we have contextual measures which really provide a health check. And we have improvement actions that will happen during 21-22, responding to the challenges ahead for meeting our outcomes. We've also highlighted in the action plan the related sustainable development goals that they contribute to. A copy of the action plan for 21-22 can be found at Appendix 2. Section 5, employee implications. All resources are required to contribute to the implementation of the strategy's action plan and to ensure that actions and targets are met. Financial implications. The actions within the strategy action plan have been funded previously from existing resource budgets and us securing external funding. However, we do have a new climate challenge fund that will help towards meeting these targets. Section 7, climate change, sustainability, environmental implications. The strategy contributes to us meeting our public sector climate change duties and the biodiversity duty and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the only other implications is that failure to meet these is part of our council's top risk. If I can bring you back to section 2, recommendations, the committee's asked to approve the action plan and to note that it will be reported to committee at Q2 and Q4 for update. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Do we have any member wish questions of Leslie? I see Robert's hands up. Robert?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's just on page 23, there's reference to the potential of a South Lanarkshire Climate Change Charter and linkages with local businesses. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff is to do with the council's own objectives, but it did seem to me that there's a lot of potential in trying to link some sort of charter. I don't know if there's a charter mark type thing or anything like that that local businesses can achieve in this area that that tick the variety of different boxes, and we can link this maybe to advice and perhaps even appropriate to grant support and things of that kind. Is there something we can build on this that gives a bit of practicality to it, if I can put it that way?
Thanks, Robert. Leslie?
Thanks. So, Councillor Brown, this is an action that is ongoing, and we had hoped to kind of pick this up last year, but obviously with COVID, businesses had other priorities. So it's something that we will, as part of the economic recovery, is to look at how we can align this with a green recovery and how we can set up that charter. So there will be discussions with businesses. I'm actually have a meeting with the local economic forum in 2 weeks' time. So I will raise this as part of our meeting with them, and we can come back to committee at Q2 with an update on how well we're progressing that.
Okay, Michael, you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I think just add a few comments, hopefully be helpful. I think, first of all, I think Leslie's absolutely correct. Businesses since November have obviously been closed. Since Monday, they're starting to reopen, and I think their main focus, completely understandably, is to get back on their feet and start to have a thriving business, and we'll do our best to support them in that. Once we're probably by that point, is we will look to support them and obviously bring forward support towards green economy. And our networking with our businesses will promote that. And without kind of jumping ahead, Chair, there is within the report I'm going to present on the climate change fund a proposal to identify an officer that will specifically deal with the sector of green economy. And I think that would be part of that work, to network and bring forward some form of charter. So it's very much a marker at this point in time, a bit of thinking to do. But I think we have to give businesses the opportunity just to get back on their feet. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see that I've got Alec's hand up as well. Alec?
Yeah, John, it was to do with performance measures in procurement. Miles are one of the greatest contributors to global warming in terms of transporting stuff around to get it to where it's needed. Yeah, I see nothing in here to try and improve local purchasing, to reduce the number of miles that are needed. Is that a subsection that's not covered here, or has it not been identified as a way of reducing our carbon footprint?
I'm sure that's something that we look at in every procurement contract, Alec, but I'll bring in Michael or Leslie just to give you some background information. Michael?
Chair, yeah, I'm happy to give initial comments, and maybe Leslie will give the detail. But certainly my recollection within the good food strategy, we talk about local sourcing and thereby reducing miles. So it may be within the actions within the strategy, which will be captured within the sustainability strategy itself. But I'll just bring in Leslie just to make sure that I'm not just jumping to a conclusion there, and it's actually within the sustainability strategy. Leslie, could you come in there, please?
Yes, thanks, Michael. So, Councillor Allison, in terms of the council's own carbon footprint, the miles that are travelled for our purchases doesn't come into that scope. And that was mainly because we didn't at that time have robust data on that. So our own carbon footprint doesn't include that at the moment. However, there is a drive from Scottish Government for us to look as what's called indirect emissions, and this constitutes as indirect emissions. So it is conversations that we've been having with procurement on how we start to measure that and get a baseline of that to drive down. But Michael is right in terms of looking at that through the food procurement, and also Councillor Ross has mentioned that it is something that we do look at in each of the procurement contracts. However, gathering that information is not as straightforward, but as I said, it is something that we do have to work with procurement on how we address that in our indirect emissions.
Okay. Councillor McAdams.
Aye, thanks, John. It was just to say, I remember us speaking about this before, so I just quickly looked up my notes, and it was, we talked about it, I'm pretty sure it was the first climate change committee that we had, and we talked about that we had even though we'd had a sustainable procurement policy since 2009, it was agreed that we needed to look at it. I asked a question about it, and I don't have the answer, but I'm pretty sure that it came back that we were going to actually be looking at the full procurement system. I don't think it was getting done until 2022. If the officers could just confirm that, then it means that we would then know that, you know, it would be able to answer the question, because we know then it would actually be looked at a whole, because obviously we knew that we needed to be more sustainable, and like, you know, have less like carbon miles and whatever else, and be like buying more local. So if the officers could answer that, that would be great.
Yeah, you're quite right there, Monique. As far as our community wealth building strategy is concerned, procurement takes a huge part of that, but as I say, as a local authority, we can only do so much. A number of laws pertaining to procurement need to be changed, and I'm sure these will be getting looked at by the Scottish Government, who also have a community wealth building strategy as well. So I'll hand over to Michael there, but I'm sure this is something we are looking at as we go forward. Michael?
Yes, Chair, just very briefly, that date does... I do recall that date, although I can't 100% confirm that, Councillor McAdam. So if it's okay with yourself, Chair, I'll check that with Finance and Corporate and confirm that to members, whether that's the review date. But it does sound familiar. But I'll, if it's okay, I'll come back to you all.
Thanks very much. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thanks very much. Can we move on to item 4 then, which is the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration, pages 35 to 40. And I would invite Helene Gurijon to speak to this report, please. Thanks. Helene.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to set the background to the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration and to recommend that the Council signs it. So the paragraph 3 of the report presents the background. The Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration is a pledge and a call to action by local and national governments from all over the world to accelerate the development of integrated food policies as a key tool in the fight against climate change, with benefits for biodiversity, ecosystem regeneration, circularity, access to sustainable and healthy diet for all, and the creation of resilient livelihood for farm and food workers. So therefore, the declaration commits subnational governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from urban and regional food systems. The declaration was launched in December 2020, and it was developed in preparation of the UN Climate Change Conference that will take place in Glasgow in November. So it is for this reason that it is called the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration, but this is not a Glasgow City Council-led initiative. So the declaration is available in Appendix 1. Then you have the paragraph 4, which explains the rationale of the declaration. So there are 3 main justifications for this declaration, which are the role of food system in carbon emissions, the role of subnational government with numerous actions related to food, and the role of integrated food policies. Paragraph 4 also presents the benefits of signing the declaration. So the first one is in terms of reputation. So it's an opportunity for the Council to renew its commitment to tackle climate change and to develop a good food council. And this is aligned with the objectives of the climate change and sustainability strategy and the good food strategy. The second benefit is the opportunity to raise awareness about the impact of food systems on climate change by sharing information with employees and residents. And the third benefit is peer learning, as a platform of signatories will be provided to share best practices. In paragraph 5, you have the proposal and the next steps. So the declaration can be signed online via the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration webpage, and it is proposed that this will be undertaken by the Council leader as the chair of this committee. There are 3 commitments attached to the signature. The first one is to develop and implement integrated food policies and strategies. The second commitment is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from urban and regional food systems. And the third one is to call on national government to establish supportive and enabling policy frameworks and appropriate governance mechanisms. So the Council already fulfills or is working to fulfill these commitments with the development and implementation of the Good Food Strategy. So this refers to Commitment 1. And in particular, the Objective 10 of the strategy aims at reducing the impact of food system on the environment and its contribution to climate change. And this refers to Commitment 2. With regard to commitment number 3, so this is about adding the Council's voice to the movement calling for action at national level during the COP26. So by signing the declaration, the Council will commit to continue to take action, but there is no compliance mechanism attached to this declaration. So if the recommendation is approved and the Council becomes part of the signatories, we will work with the corporate communication team to promote it and to share information about the impact of food system on climate change. So by doing this, we'll make sure that this is the South Lanarkshire Council's commitment to the declaration to avoid any potential confusion that may arise with the use of Glasgow in this title. There are no specific employee or financial implication. And I will ask you to refer to paragraph 2, which is a recommendation to agree to sign the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Elaine. Does any member have any questions? No, can we agree the recommendation? Oh, sorry, Alec. Sorry, Alec. No, carry on.
Okay. I do have concerns about this, not because I'm a climate change denier or anything. We do need to do a great deal of work to mitigate what is happening within our climate, but it needs to be done on an accurate, factual basis. The area that I'm aware of, I read at 4.1, according to the Glasgow Declaration, 26% of GHG emissions come from agriculture. This is based on the United Nations way of evaluating it, which does not accurately reflect agricultural practice in the UK, far less in Scotland. For instance, work has been done in Northern Ireland, I believe at Greenmount, and I think, but I'm not certain, down in Oxford, in the red meat sector, which has identified that the United Nations way of identifying GHGs is overemphasising the effect by a factor of about 500. They do not realise the difference between methane and carbon dioxide. They take in no account of the absorption in a grass-based system that is required. So whereas it is very important that we do work to a better climate and address climate change, it has to be done factually. And this paper does not reflect that. And I think we do need to get accurate information for Scotland so that we can actually affect the change. I could make greater changes to what we are supposed to be doing simply by putting in accurate information and changing nothing. That won't help. So therefore, I do think we need to ensure that it is effective in Scottish terms.
Thanks very much, Alec. I can't argue that fact because I'm not sure of it, but I'm sure that if we ask someone to look at that and come back and verify if what you're saying is correct, can you comment on that, Helen? Or is that something you can maybe take away and try and find out for us?
Chair Michael is looking to come in.
Okay, Michael.
I'll bring Helene in again, just in the point of detail, but I think I do take the point that Councillor Allison is making, and with documents that are prepared at an international level, there will be issues around about how you record data and how that's reflected at a local level, and I'm happy to take that away, Chair. But I think the message within the proposal still remains sound and robust, is that there is a contribution to greenhouse gases from agriculture. Where that's pitched in terms of percentage is clearly the point that Councillor Allison's making. But I think the message and the purpose and the reputational aspect of signing up to this, I think, still remains sound, Chair. So we're happy to take that away, but I hope that doesn't preclude the committee actually supporting signing up to the proposal. Helena, are you able to come in and maybe explain where the data is derived from and perhaps address Councillor Allison's concerns?
Yeah, so these are national data, I think from the Scottish government, but I mean there is no. I'm not sure there is specific measure for South Lanarkshire and maybe for agriculture, but for sure there is no specific measure when it comes to all the food systems. So not only agriculture, but the rest, for instance, food waste and transport, etc. So and I think it's because there is no methodology to do that. However, we can seek support from Nourish Scotland and from the organisation leading on this declaration to see whether there are more accurate measures to reflect the role of food on the environment. And I can check with this organisation to have a better understanding of this data.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shearer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to raise a related issue on food waste. I mean, in normal circumstances, the council produces many, many meals during the day, whether that's in our schools or around council buildings. And if the meals are not used, they are binned at the end of the day. Now, I have raised this before with officers about the possibility of these perfectly good food being given to charities that feed people who are unfortunately going hungry, only to have it raised and say, oh, but there's health and safety issues, councillor. Somebody could get poisoned by the food because it's gone off. Now, it's fresh made food, and we're in a stupid situation where the current situation of regulations means people go hungry and we add to our carbon footprint. Now, not because of ill will, but because of red tape. There must be a way around this. If somebody could answer that, I'd be greatly appreciative. Thank you.
I see Alistair's got his hand up, David. Alistair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As far as within primary schools are concerned, we have got a booking system as far as meals are concerned, and we put that in place to specifically ensure that we didn't produce meals that we wouldn't use. So the food waste from primary schools is minimal, and the ability to put any surplus meals wider is very negligible. I agree there's maybe more of a wastage side within secondary schools because there isn't a pre-ordering system in. So quite happy to take that and look at that. And I know Helena's been working that in the background with facility services during the COVID to see whether there was any ability to use those surplus food in the wider community.
Thanks, Alistair. So David, we'll have a look at that, okay? Is there any other? I don't see any other hands raised. Can I move the recommendations?
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We can move on to the next item, which is the Edinburgh Declaration, pages 41 to 52. And it's Chris Waltho to speak to this report, please. Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to set out the background to the Edinburgh Declaration and to recommend that the Council signs the Declaration. So Section 3 of the report provides background into how and why the Declaration has been produced. The Declaration expresses concern for global biodiversity loss and seeks to encourage agencies at all levels, along with stakeholders, who work together to address this matter. The Declaration contains a commitment which is already delivered by Scottish local authorities under the biodiversity and climate change legal duties. The commitment is more intended to raise awareness of the types of activities local authorities can undertake within the broader international community and directed at national governments in countries where cooperation with local governments remain low. At the time of preparing the report, the following councils have signed the declaration: Aberdeenshire Council, South Ayrshire and Stirling, and both national park authorities, and along with a number of organisations and governments and cities across the world. Section 4 of the report outlines the rationale and benefits of signing the declaration, and a copy of the declaration is provided in Appendix 1. Signing the declaration in advance of COP15, which is a global summit for biodiversity due to be held in October in China. The paper says May, but the date has been put back now to October. This COP will show local governments' commitments to working together to tackle the loss of biodiversity globally. COP15 is the biodiversity equivalent of the COP26 UN climate event taking place in Glasgow, so there's an equivalence there. It is recognised that not every signee to the Edinburgh Declaration will meet all its commitments in the declaration. Rather, it's a collective desire for targets to be met collaboratively, building on the unique contribution that local governments can make. There will be no accompanying delivery plan, a specific delivery plan, and there will be no individual monitoring or reporting requirements. However, the Council will continue to formally report every 3 years against our statutory biodiversity duty. This is an opportunity for the Council to renew its commitment to tackle climate change and develop biodiversity. The pledge is aligned with the objectives and approach of the Climate Change and Sustainability Strategy and the Biodiversity Duty Implementation Plan. Section 4 of the report outlines the next steps, which include COSLA signing the declaration on behalf of councils, subject to their final endorsement by COSLA leaders in May. Given the timing and frequency of this committee, it is considered appropriate to report this matter now, and that any signing of the declaration by this council would follow the endorsement by COSLA. If approved, officers will liaise with COSLA on how individual local authorities can sign the document as standalone entities, and this will be promoted through the normal channels as part of this. Officers will take the opportunity to share information about the impact of biodiversity on climate change and inform residents and employees about council initiatives in this area. There is no requirement to undertake a strategic environmental assessment, and there are no employee or financial implications. I would refer you back to section 2 of the report and ask that the committee approve 1, that the council supports COSLA signing the Edinburgh Declaration on behalf of Scottish local authorities, and 2, that the council agrees to sign the Edinburgh Declaration as a standalone council. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Chris. Does any member have any questions for Chris? No, I'll move the recommendations then.
I'll second,
Chair. Sorry, Monique. Carry on, Monique.
John, it was just to say that I welcome this. I don't know that it's achievable though, but I think that that's something that Chris has pointed out as well. And it was just to say that I had looked over figures, and in the last 10 years, then 49% of species have decreased in abundance. So there's been nothing done to do with that rate of decline. There's also 1 in 9 species that face extinction, including red squirrels, Scottish wildcats, capercaillies, and also the Scottish breeding seabirds. They're declining by 38%. So I think that everybody would welcome this, but it's to realise that there's a massive problem there. Also, there's major environmental bodies have had their funding slashed, because there's the Scottish National Heritage, there's SEPA, which I can't remember what that stands for, Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, Scotland's Rural College, and also the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh. It's like they've all had their funding slashed, but we're expecting them to then be able to satisfy this. And the other thing was, I had saw it on Google that there was a leaked Scottish Government report that showed that there was a 10-year target to prevent damage to marine wildlife, and that had also been missed. So I think that there needs to be, yes, we want to support it, yes, we hope it will happen, but I think there needs to be a realism there that I don't know that it's actually achievable the way that things are just now. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks for your comments. I presume if we continue with our climate strategy here in South Lanarkshire and we achieve what we're trying to do, then we'll be playing our bit in adding towards this Edinburgh Agreement. So thanks very much for those comments. I would move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Can we move on then to the next item, which is item 6, Climate Change South Lanarkshire Fund. And I would ask Michael McGlynn to give us the report on this, please. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Chair. So members, the purpose of this report is to bring to you high-level proposals on the range and scope of areas of which the £2 million Climate Challenge Fund would be directed, and that details of the project would be monitored and reported back to future committees. So just very briefly, by way of background, members will be aware that you agreed for the Climate Challenge Fund to be established in the value of £2 million. And in doing so, we highlighted within the report some of the purposes of that. In particular, I would just highlight and just quote to say that the £2 million investment will enable the committee to prioritise match funding for external funding applications specifically linked to UK and Scottish Government's Green Economy and Green Jobs programmes. I just think it's important just to kind of hold that in your mind as I go through the report. So since February, the steering group, which is made up of senior officers, we have taken that direction from the Council's decision and discussed thematically where we can actually start to direct that funding to contribute to climate change objectives. And you'll see within paragraph 3.2 and then following below that the thematic areas, which will probably come as absolutely no surprise to you at all. We're looking at the natural environment, part of which we touched upon just a minute or so ago in the last report, the built environment, travel and transport, a bit active travel, waste and recycling, touching upon the Councillor Shear is mentioned earlier on, and communities, and of course the actual economy itself. So as officers, we think these are reasonable and wide enough thematic areas that will start to give us a framework in which to direct the actual funding. Members will also be aware that through previous reports to committee, the Council continues to make good progress in contributing to the climate change agenda and also reducing their carbon footprint. But I think it's probably fair to say that the next stages will be a lot more challenging. We've seen the targets increasing, the dates coming forward, and we see that starting to get real traction internationally as well. So this funding will help us take us to the next level in terms of carbon reduction, other changes to adapting and mitigation. And so the report sets out, based on the thematic areas, how we can actually take that forward. And I'll come back to the point about external funding opportunities to support project development and or their implementation. And I think it's really incumbent upon us as officers to ensure that all those opportunities are exploited to the fullest and to the benefit of South Lanarkshire. And within section 5.1 and also 5.2, we have listed there some of the external funding opportunities, but also at 5.2, where some of the funding is coming from the Scottish Government. And for members who are at the exec committee, you recall that Paul made reference to that funding potentially starting to come forward. So with all of that in mind, it is proposed that the funding essentially be split into two areas, staffing and then into projects. I'll just briefly deal with them in turn, Chair. So given that the elevated level of importance which is now given to climate change with this committee and Council's further commitment to it, there is a real ambition to make a step change to the Council's activities. As I mentioned before, I think it will be more challenging. This will inevitably increase the level of work for officers on top of existing work loads. So we did consider about how we can actually manage it. But if we do want to make that step change, it's our view as officers that we need to add to the staffing resources for at least a period of 23 months, and that will really kind of match the council's commitment. So within 5.4, excuse me, you'll see there's a proposal there to add 7 officers, 6.5 full-time equivalents to the establishment. And the main 4 of those officers would be located within my own resource, and then 3 officers actually within housing and technical resources, and they would be looking to focus on and progress in the strategic energy review. Having said all that, climate change is a corporate and a council priority, and therefore these officers, whilst they sit within community and enterprise and housing and technical, would be a corporate resource supporting all our resources and our communities. The other point I would highlight, Chair, at this point in time, we are starting to experience where there's external funding that they also support project management costs, which is essentially staffing. And again, we would look to explore and exploit those opportunities, and in turn that may actually reduce the staffing costs, but we'll monitor that as we go along. The second part of the funds, and where the vast majority of the funds would be directed, would be towards project and development funds. And it is proposed that we split these into short, medium and long term, and that's summarised at 5.7. So in the short term, we would continue with the council's projects and pilots, but also we would look to establish a small grant fund for local groups and schools. At previous reports, you've heard the great work that education resources do with our schools, and we want to support our communities with their projects as well and increase the awareness even more. Through the medium term, we'd look to match the use for match funding for bid for external funding, and then in the longer term, prepare feasibility studies, which may be for larger projects that we can seek funding for. All of this funding would be managed through the Climate Change and Sustainability Steering Group, as I mentioned before, made up of senior officers, but very conscious that we have to come back and keep members informed, and we propose to do that twice a year. So with that, Chair, just at section 10, on the basis that committee approve the recommendations, we would firstly look to commence the recruitment of the additional officers and seek to have them imposed by late summer. We're keen to develop the grant funding proposal for local communities, and they would look to launch that late summer. We continue to work with identifying and sourcing external funding opportunities, and as I say, and lastly, we provide regular updates to the committee itself. So with that, Chair, I would just refer members back to paragraph 2.1, ask them to approve the recommendations, and of course, happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Michael. It's really good to see this report come forward, and I actually think it's very exciting that we're going to be instituting this programme of advancing and using this money that we put aside at the budget. So I really welcome this report. I would ask if there's any members got questions of Michael. I see that Monique has her hand up. Is that a legacy hand, Monique, or is it?
No, I'll take it down, but I want to say something. But thanks, John. Right. It was just to say, so see with regards to the external funding, Michael. So see, like obviously we had chatted in the executive, and we had talked about there was like one of the groups. It was like the EK Litter Group, who are doing obviously a phenomenal job, and they are working with Alistair's team, i.e. Ian Guild and Emma. For that group to sustain itself, and to like be able to keep on going, they're going to need to be able to get funding. They are also they're I'm trying to think of my words, so I apologise for not being clear. They're doing an app, for want of a better word, and the app is getting used to work in conjunction with South Lanarkshire Waste as an authority, so that they can all join up, so that it's more symbiotic. So is that the sort of thing that they could use, that they could apply to this fund to get funds to further progress their app? Because they're just like a group that are all doing it in their free time, but what they're doing is actually helping South Lanarkshire Council. So that was one thing. And the other thing was, could this fund, I know previously it was Michael from the EK Task Force. We basically gave money and somebody else gave money, but we did it through the Community and Enterprise, because I remember it came to committee, and I saw on LinkedIn the other day that Michael's left and he's got another job, which obviously is at a loss to us. But would this fund be able to be used the way that you were talking about, so that we could take somebody on, so that it meant that there was somebody still there that would be able to work with the East Kilbride Task Force or Smart Sustainable, if that would be more appropriate? So it was those two questions, please.
Thanks, Marique. I'll hand over to Michael on that. But on your first one there, the Communities Renewal Fund might be something where they can bid for funding. But Michael will have more information on that. Michael?
So on the grants, if I maybe give an example how we use town centre funding, and you're probably wondering why I'm bringing that up. And the reason being is that we, through the committee, agreed to make an allocation to a number of town centre community groups to prepare an app and supported that technology as opposed to doing it individually. And I've seen the app and it's very good. So again, that's possible to support that. I think we would need to ensure that what they are doing is contributing to our sustainability strategy and our objectives. And I'd imagine the group would probably design any grant application along those lines. The other aspect within the report, we highlight that there is a myriad of funding streams coming forward. As most members know, we do have an external funding team that comprises of 2 people. We are identifying within the report that there's a need for an additional officer, looking at the sustainability development funding, so we don't lose opportunities, so they can support the communities, and basically ensure that we can maximise external funding opportunities within South Lanarkshire. So, Chair, I think the kind of short answer to this is that we still to design the criteria for the grant funding. We wanted to ensure in principle that members are happy with this travel direction. That will focus on supporting our sustainability strategy. And if groups are bringing forward projects that tie in with that, I can see no good reason why we would be actually resistant to it. So hopefully that will give you a bit of comfort just now, Councillor McAdams. Returning to Smart Sustainable East Kilbride, we have been approached by Smart Sustainable East Kilbride for extending the funding. We have gone back to them with comments and just clarification about actual outputs and outcomes. And we have still to get a response from them. It'll be still subject to a committee decision in terms of funding. The budget has been set aside for it if there is member support for it. But you're right that that is funded by Scottish Enterprise and also by South Lanarkshire College, and we've been going back to Smart Sustainable East Kilbride collectively, so there's a collective voice in that. So we're waiting to hear back from Smart Sustainable East Kilbride, and if there is a business case for future funding, we will bring that to community and enterprise, and members can take a view whether that's worthy of supporting. And just lastly, Chair, so I know I'm going on a bit, is that again, one of the officers that we're looking to identify within this report is an officer that will focus on green economy. So again, we would work with any businesses who have got ambitions in terms of green economy, low carbon, and we think we need a dedicated resource for that. So that they would also work with whoever came into Smart Sustainable East Kilbride if there's support for that additional funding. So a very long-winded answer, Chair, but just to cover the points that are raised. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Does that answer your questions, Mike?
Kinda. Can I come back though and just ask a question? It would just be to say, Michael, I wouldn't see any reason why there would have been a change to not support the EK Task Force or Smart Sustainable, if I'm getting that wrong. I wouldn't know why that would have changed, because if anything, especially through what we're here discussing today, if anything, it's just like it's actually needed more than ever. So I wouldn't know why that, all of a sudden there wouldn't be a need for that. And the other thing that I was going to say, excuse me for clearing my throat, I apologise, was on the East Kilbride community litter pickers. They are working very closely with Ian Guild and Emma, and basically like they are basically noting how many bags of litter they're picking up and whatever else. So it's just like, I think it's actually something that if we didn't work with this group, and also I know there's a group in Cambuslang as well, we'd actually be missing a trick as a local authority, because they would be like helping us with our carbon footprint. So so that was why it was like I was asking about it. And also it's just like, and you know this yourself, it's like you're an experienced officer, you've been doing this for a long time, right? But it's just like these groups, they all just come together, and it's everybody's obviously got a different set of skills. But what I'm saying is, it would be good for the fact that we're already working with them, that the council actually gets the kudos off of its community's hard work by pulling together, by actually approaching this group and seeing what we can actually do to help them, rather than just be, yeah, we're the council, we've got funds, if you want to come and see us, come and see us. I think we should be extending a hand to this group. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks very much, Marique. Joe? Thanks,
Chair. I think Michael started to answer the point I was going to make there, just in response to Marique's last question. I really just think that for this committee, given the remit of this committee, it really should be aware of the breadth and I think the importance of what Smart Sustainable East Kilbride is trying to do. And I have to say, it is disappointing that across sort of South Lanarkshire, across Scotland to a large extent, we've known what the challenges were in this for years. We've known that the solution for years has been, and particularly East Kilbride, we have to get buildings retrofitted, and we have to get, because they will become increasingly difficult to let if we don't. We've got a huge issue with the industrial base at East Kilbride. I think, Chair, yourself, you alluded to the community fund that's been set up. I know there is concern in the business community about the level of engagement that there has been, and I think that again relates to the timescales around some of this. So I'm hoping that what we've got here is a way of adding some capacity to avoid that happening, so that we are able to develop projects that are in the green economy, that we can, even if we aren't ready to go right now, they're on the shelf and we can get them implemented as soon as the funding becomes available. I would like to see a share of that funding at in East Kilbride, though people wouldn't be surprised to say. And the other thing that I've mentioned before, an area where we've known we need to take action for a long time, but I don't really see any progress, is in East Kilbride. We had the potential. I think we still do have the potential, but we're losing out as investment goes to the northeast when it comes to the hydrogen economy. I think what this funding, so it isn't a question, I suppose it's a wish on my part, that what this funding and the funding that goes into the green economy should be creating a bit of capacity to do is actually to make sure that places like East Kilbride and South Lanarkshire are benefiting from the creation of green jobs. Because the truth is, we've been talking about green jobs for over 10 years, and we've been very good at creating green jobs, particularly in the renewable industry in Denmark and Bahrain. But we actually have to make sure that we are creating a fair share of employment here in South Lanarkshire, and so that's where I think there is the potential here with that specific economic development focus in some of those jobs, but also with some of those other schemes that were alluded to earlier. And I cannot emphasise enough the importance of Smart Sustainable East Kilbride as a vehicle to deliver that. And indeed, I'm glad that we've got the money committed. I hope that other partners, such as Scottish Enterprise, have also got the money committed in their budget to make sure that it happens.
Thanks, Joe. You'll probably know that the recent Levelling Up Fund and the Communities Fund have only recently been given details to us, and both of these have very tight commitments on how the money is used and when the money is spent, which makes it even more difficult to take full advantage of them. But I'll bring Michael in on this one to answer you back. Michael?
It's I suppose maybe not to answer back, but I think the word that Councillor Fagan used there was capacity, is to create that capacity to do that legwork and to make sure we don't miss that opportunity. And through the work by officers and also in part with the SSEK and Strathclyde University, we are developing a project around the repurposing and the maintenance of wind turbines, who largely have a 25-year lifespan. So we're looking to ensure that there's a network of businesses that can take that opportunity, that demand, as wind farms actually get repurposed, or the actual machinery needs to be maintained. So we are making some strides in there, but I think this capacity, as I said before, really is needed to make that step change now. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Michael. Peter?
Yeah, Michael just took away my thunder there. Yeah, of course we need to do more, absolutely. And there's 6 new green jobs that were being employed just by ourselves. The amount of work that we need to do in order to overcome the challenges we face with climate change is enormous. At the moment, I think we've got Leslie, Helena and Julie, and that's everybody that we've got working on this. And they do a terrific job. They've worked really hard throughout the past few years, but it's a capacity issue. There's enormous potential out there, and only having 3 people to deal with that throughout the whole of South Lanarkshire is absolutely not enough. So it's really welcome that we're taking this seriously. We're employing these people, and these will open up new ventures and new capacity within South Lanarkshire and hopefully throughout Scotland, working with other teams from other places. So I think it's brilliant, and I look forward to seeing the improvements coming. So thanks very much, yeah.
Thanks very much. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to move the recommendations.
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thanks very much. Next item is one for noting. It's air quality in South Lanarkshire, pages 61 to 72. And can I invite David Duffy to speak on this report, please?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, councillors. Just to say, you have the papers in front of you, but I was asked to give an update on the position of air quality within South Lanarkshire Council and what activities are going on in that area. Within environmental health, we've been charged with the legal responsibility that the council has to deliver its obligations in terms of monitoring the standards of air quality across its council, identifying areas where we have concerns, put in place certain strategies and projects to try to bring about an improvement in that. I would say across South Lanarkshire Council, we have overall a measure of good air quality. We don't have major concerns compared to other, if you compare it nationally or internationally. We do, though, have an identification process where we've identified 3 sites previously, which have been declared that I'm sure you will all be familiar with. They're called air quality management areas. One's in Whirleys and East Kilbride. The other one's Rutherglen, and last one was Lanark. However, we continue to monitor, and we're obligated to put a report back in each year to Scottish Government to say what the state of play is across that monitoring. We have an infrastructure within South Lanarkshire Council for the monitoring. Some of that's on real-time analytical tools that feed into publicly available data and web bases. They give Scottish Government's alert and notification scheme, so that if there are areas to do with air pollution or concerns at that time, you can get automatic feedbacks on that. But you can see historical results for that too. In addition to that, we have some more of your traditional air quality monitoring, if you want to call it that, in terms of lamppost and mounted stakes to identify certain pollutants and levels across a longer time frame. And we also have some mobile units where we're looking to research into specific areas. Now, to assist us with that, we have we have environmental health help with 3 financial streams, one of which is called the Local Air Quality Management System. And primarily that's finances the monitoring scheme, the monitoring tools, the equipment that's needed to do that. The next one, which is probably one that most people will have heard of, is the Action Planning Fund. And the Action Planning Fund is focused on developing projects that bring about changes in people's attitude, modal shifts from one form of transport or other ways in terms of encouraging green and climate change and sustainability projects. Now, there's a range of examples through the papers that show some of those areas that we've developed over the years. And again, it was primarily for air quality agenda, air quality issues, but that clearly feeds into what this committee, the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, have as part of their remit. You may well be familiar with lots of the different events in there. I would just like to highlight one of them, which is Beat the Street, which finishes today and has been, I think this is our 4th running of the Beat the Street, and we've got some notable achievers even on the committee in terms of our cyclists. Councillor Ross is recognise some PR issues on that, which brings attention to the Beat the Street campaign, but also the other events that we've had in the Beat the Street, and the whole campaign seems to be, it hits different marks. It hits health, it hits air quality, it hits sustainability. It opens up avenues for local people to recognise that they don't have to take their car, they can walk, scoot or cycle. And at close of play this morning when I checked, we were at 130,000 miles. We had 8,500 participants in the scheme. So it's only one example of the various projects, but a very good one. The next financial stream was vehicle emission testing and engine idling. This is predominantly an awareness raising campaign, which we work in partnership with other local authorities to deliver. And it's bringing to folks' attention basically the maintenance of their vehicles, as well as targeting engine idling and recognising that whilst these two issues can be offences, as in you can issue fixed penalty notices for them, primarily it's to get it into people's minds that maintenance of their equipment and also potentially avoiding unnecessary use of the car. Fitting in quite nicely with what your previous paper was, in terms of match funding, I think we've been very successful in terms of match funding with our colleagues within community and enterprise resources, within like roads, active travel plans, some other climate change funding, active travel funding, shows that Scottish Government, when we apply for the funds, are very keen that if we already have a similar grant scheme or a similar financial scheme that we can match the cash against, then they're very much encouraged to give towards South Lanarkshire. And South Lanarkshire Council, we've done very well in terms of the overall cash that's come to the 32 local authorities and achieving some of them. There's lots of other ones, examples, like I said, that are highlighted in that. Anything else to put? Again, there aren't any. I'm not asking for approval. It was an update on this side. There's not financial implication or employee implication because predominantly we have a small team within environmental health that have led on the air quality aspects for the last year since the legal obligation began. But we are very much networked within the council about projects and also external partnerships, for instance, South Lanarkshire Leisure Cultural Services, and also the NHS Lanarkshire 2 for various events. So if I've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Thanks very much for that report, David. Yeah, I was fascinated by the report. There was an awful lot in there that I didn't realise we were doing, and especially I congratulate you on Beat the Street. As you probably know, I've been very active in taking part in that. I think I'm sitting at number 9 on the leadership board at the present time, having done nearly 700 miles on the bike over the last couple of weeks. And it might be nice to know that the local people in my community here who keep seeing me, and I was referred to as the old guy in the bike, going up and down Silverton Hill Avenue, which I can't deny at 74. But the community decided to help me along the way, and they've raised almost £400 for East Kilbride Hospice as a result of that. So, I think it's been a great success, and more power to your elbow. It's involved an awful lot more people in active travel, and that's what we really need to do going forward. I see that we've got some hands up here. Monique?
Aye, thanks, John, and well done in your cycling. It was just to say that when I was reading the report, I thought it was really good. I like the fact that it was more than us just noting and cutting down. I like the fact that we were actually looking to repair as well. That was like noted in page 64, and it was to do with the air pollution fighting plants. The only thing that I wanted to say though was that when we're talking about the mapping of cycle routes, we're doing that across the whole of like South Lanarkshire. And, you know, when it comes to the technical training events and also the traffic and transportation joint projects, they're kind of done all over. Whereas for me, the repairing is one of the most essential parts. So I warmly welcome the Grow 73 group for the pilot that they're doing, but this shouldn't just be in one area. This should be maximised, and that should be not just one pilot in one area, it should be a pilot in every single area. Sorry for clearing my throat again. And the other thing I was going to say was, it was only when I was at a presentation the other day from the British Heart Foundation that I had found it an interesting fact. It's like, you know, when everybody like quotes, oh, there's like, you know, 2,500 Scots die each year from air pollution. And you kind of think, well, how does that actually like, you know, work? And then it comes down to the fact that the British Heart Foundation were saying that they've done research, and there's now this really strong link between short-term exposure to air pollution, and then it's linked with either stroke deaths or people taking strokes. So I definitely think that we need to do more than just one pilot. There needs to be a pilot in every single area to do with the air pollution fighting plants. But well done.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. James Warthall.
Right. It was at the bottom paragraph on page 65, you know, about the idling engines. I mean, that's been a sore point with me for a long time. You know, in the last year it hasn't been a problem because, you know, swimming hasn't been taking place. But what used to irritate me intensely was that school transport, bringing kids to the leisure centre at Dolan and in Straven, invariably sit with the engine running for the best part of an hour while the kids are in swimming. You know, and that's compounded by, you know, what happens in my local Tesco car park, where it's a favourite place for council operatives to have their lunch breaks or their meal breaks. And again, an awful lot of them sit with the engines idling. Now, I know it's, you know, it is habit, but it might be an idea if we had all council vehicles fitted with a sticker inside the cab, just reminding drivers that it's council policy that they should switch off the engine when they're sitting there. They shouldn't need the reminder, but maybe if the reminder was in the cab in front of them, you know, it might have an effect.
Thanks very much, Jim. I've had a similar situation outside some of my primary schools, and involved the police, who gave an initial warning and then a fine on the second occasion. So, you know, there is ways to combat as well, but certainly a notice inside the cars would certainly be helpful. David, have you got something to say on that?
Yes, if it's okay. Well, I'll deal with Councillor Ward O's comments there. Just in terms of the engine idling of the buses, we work in partnership with the schools when we're doing targeted campaigns. We let the schools know about it. Engine idling is actually enforced also by the local authority as an environmental health. So if you have an engine idling concern, by all means, let us know about it and we'll go and tackle that particular site. It's a common issue, unfortunately, that the fleet that's used to transport some of our kids to and from activities, the bus operators don't turn them off. But we have tackled this issue in other areas, and that's across. We've tackled it in Lanark. I know that for a fact. But if you've got a local issue within Straven, Councillor, by all means, we'll go and approach the buses and tell them exactly the same as Councillor Ross has just described. The legislation asks you to turn, you have to have an initial warning to turn the vehicle off, and the offence is committed by the driver, not the company. So it's the obligation is in catching that driver who's left the bus ticking over. We did have some success in that site, and we've had other successes. Now, engine idling isn't just on the project, that stands throughout the whole year. If you have an issue to do with engine idling, let environmental health know and we'll get an officer out to go and investigate it. Engine idling is only an offence on public roads. So within the Tesco car park example that you gave, or that you'd referred to, we would be a bit stuck as to what we could tell them to do because they're on the private land. However, we work with Fleet, Dave Gibson, and most of our vehicles have engine monitoring and emissions aspects, partly to do with the climate change, but also for a commitment to use less carbon. And if they're sitting for a period of time with the engine on while they're on their lunch, I don't doubt Dave Gibson would be very interested to hear why that's the case. There are certain exemptions in terms of the engine idling, in that if you've got refrigerated storage or powered operations, for instance like ambulances, that you can leave the vehicles running. So there are some exemptions, but in the most instance, when someone's asked to turn their vehicle off and realises the impact, they do it. Could I jump back to Councillor McAdams to points I listed from her? Yes. If that's okay, Councillor?
Yes.
You'd asked about, or you'd said that the M73 growing campaign, where we're using legumes, which is they're basically carbon fixing plants, where they take carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back into their own leaves and trees to grow. It was a novel approach, but it was a novel project at the time that Scottish Government were willing to finance because it sat within or close to the air quality management area, Rutherglen. So we're not saying we're stuck, because we try district-wide campaigns and projects, but we also can get a wee bit better support for untried or untested novel air quality awareness raising campaigns. And I think that was primarily why we got financed for the M73. We got them tri-bike, electric bike to move around on to do their servicing, but we also helped support the finance and installation of the legumes that I was describing about the fixing. Working with local projects across the board, Active Travel, Pass for All, we do get some of these projects to put forward to say yes to finance or not, but ultimately it's the Scottish Government that tells us whether we can get that cash or not. The other one you'd said about recognising the heart impacts. The Environmental Health have got a contribution into what's called the Public Health Plan, which is working with NHS Lanarkshire about how we can improve community health. And we were the first of the local authority stroke health boards in Scotland to actually embed in their community health plan the consideration of air quality impacts. So the community health plan, that's your consultant in public health medicine, who traditionally maybe would just look at smoking, heart, diet, recognised how we as a council can contribute into improving networks for walking, improving other ways, not using your car, using your bike, as Councillor Ross is demonstrating, and other techniques. So we do embed through the health community as well, and working through with the community health plan. And it's a kind of overlap, but it does fit in to the health board's agenda to improve health and gain benefits through that side too. I hope it gives you a wee steer.
Thanks very much. Okay, I have Councillor Devlin.
Hi, John. Thanks for that. There's some really good stuff in this, David. And is there any way possible? I'm looking at the map where it shows you the continuous monitoring for South Lanarkshire, and that represents Bodle and Uddingston. With some of the projects going on in that, can you bring that down and more into a local level, even if it was just an area committee, so that you could see what's going on just within our area, please?
Well, the splits as such, the project or the monitoring systems, the continuous monitoring units. Sorry, I've just jumped straight in there, Councillor Ross.
Carry on.
The continuous monitoring stations kind of get dictated by the locations of them get dictated by where we're likely to have identified possible pollution sources. So your Wraith interchange model for where the monitoring station is, the Whirleys, the Blantyre one, there's about, I think it's 7 or 8 that are dotted across. They're real-time ones, and they tell you what the current state of play is with the pollution. That feeds back up into the Scottish Local Authority Air Quality Database, and it will give you real-time results for what is just now. Should you wish, or should constituents wish to know what the pollution level is in their postcode, You can sign up to that and you can get a text, a Twitter, a Facebook, whatever you want for what the forecasted pollution level is likely to be in your area. Now that helps with asthmatics, folk with heart conditions, the chronic references or the acute conditions, which Councillor McAdam had mentioned. So that's the monitoring data. The nitrous oxide, which is another pollutant, they're spread across the district to supplement that continuous monitoring, and they're dotted at locations where we've maybe had changes in roads, additional pollution introductions, say for instance developments of houses. I'll give you an example, like in Lark Hall, where we've had an expansion of houses in there. We had results beforehand and results after. We had contributions from the developers in the area to bring about more sustainable paths to get to networks. Same within East Kilbride for housing development strategies. So there is a kind of overlapping of where we put our monitoring sites within. In terms of the projects, a lot of them are district-wide. However, because of the way that the Scottish Government finances some of the, or agrees to some of the projects, it has to be shown to them that that's going to bring about an improvement in an air quality management area. Now, the air quality management areas that are declared or forecast are Rutherglen, Whirlies at East Kilbride and Lanark. So I appreciate that Uddingston Bothwell's maybe blessed just now in that it doesn't have one that's under particular concern. However, Hamilton and Blantyre, the reason that it got its Beat the Street project kind of help support was because some areas within Hamilton and in Blantyre are on the cusp in terms of the performances or the objectives. So there are district-wide initiatives or projects that we bring about, but there are also local projects that we can support or finance, which are the example Councillor McAdam said about the M73 Grow project, which was a kind of novel thing, but it raised awareness. Then other similar agents might wish to try and do that in their areas, but we still will be a bit dependent on whether we would get the finance from Scottish Government to support that. I'm imagining from Michael's previous paper that the development of a green team as such, assisting working with businesses and communities, is likely to be able to give access to those funds for projects that would help in that area. Does that answer, Maureen? Is that Councillor Devlin? Does that help?
No, that's great, David. Thanks very much for that. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much. Monique, is that a legacy hand that you still have up?
You'd love it to be a legacy hand, but no, it's
I would love it to be a legacy hand. Yeah, I think you've had more than your share of sleeping this morning.
But thank you very much, David. I just wanted to say it was going back to the air pollution fighting plants. So Maureen kind of touched on it. She made me think about something, and I was thinking about the Bothwell Growing programme, and then obviously, we've got different growing programmes in East Kilbride. There's different growing programmes in Cambuslang, and all I was thinking about was, everybody's talking about how we need to invest in nature restoration to take obviously carbon away, and I just feel as if based on what you said, it's just like there's one that's been done and it's been good because it's fitted within the tick box, right? But I think that what we then need to do is we need to look, probably using the previous committee paper for what we would be able to do with it. But we really need to look as a local authority about what other groups that are out there. We have got a community empowerment team who should already have a list of basically, who is out there and who's doing growing programmes, and we should be, approaching them so that we can actually have more of these programmes, because we are, we're doing our best by noting, we're doing our best by cutting down, but we need to do more by repairing. So, John, how do we take it forward so that we can look at each of the areas in South Lanarkshire to try and get more of the growing programmes going that specifically do things to combat air pollution?
I'm sure that's already been looked at as part of our food strategy already, Monique. So I really don't, I think we're looking at that, and the Community Planning Partnership also has a direct input in quite a lot of the things that you're talking about there. So I don't think that we've really got a problem with the intention of taking this forward and maximise it as much as possible. And I think some of the comments you made are already being looked at. So, yeah, but I'll ask people on this to take on board. Okay.
Thank you.
Richard Lockhart. Richard.
Hi there. Thanks, Chair. It's a bit of a specific question, but one of the areas which seems to come up a lot, but I know it comes up a lot, is the High Street in Lanark, and we're looking at a traffic plan in regard to that. And I just wonder how much part, if you like, air quality monitoring has played in this, because the reality is, with work that has been happening in that High Street over the last few weeks, and frequently in the summer, that High Street, together with the Wellgate, which is at the bottom end of the town, is practically a parking place for hundreds of cars, all with their engines running, and I'm told has got a higher particulate and whatever it is, phosphorus monitoring level than central London. Well, I think it's acceptable in a regional area. I'd just like you to comment, if you like, on that.
I'm certainly not going to comment. I'll get David to come in.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Lockhart, the area of the air quality management area within Lanark was declared primarily because of the pollutants associated with traffic. So the narrow thoroughfare that is Lanark High Street brings about a kind of topographical or a geographical channel which holds some of the pollutants, particulate matter. It's called PM10 or PM2.5. They're just, once PM10 is the bigger dust, PM2.5 is the very, very small dust that can go into deep sections of your lung. So there are monitoring stations, as you'll know, at the top of the high street, where we split off to the left, so it's a real-time figure for it. And there are steps just now, and we're in roads as such in terms of developmental planning. I understand they're in discussions about practical measures that could get put into place. There have already been steps in the area in terms of trying to bring about step change in route trafficking through it, but they're quite significant if you were to take them down the road, as in, restrictions on roads as to what could get through or couldn't get through. We have a pinch point just at the Wellgate, as you'll appreciate, and that brings about cars that are in a stationary position while still running, and that loads up that small channel. So it's a unique example, and it's actually a good example where the Air Quality Management Area Declaration brings other folk or other agencies in to look at how they can try to solve it, and that includes the community, the businesses, roads, not just the road flow, but roads management, in terms of traffic management, in terms of parking, in terms of deliveries, access, routing. We work with lots of agents within SLC about EcoStar Awards and trying to encourage HGV and haulage companies or anyone else who has a fleet transport to go for more improved vehicles, less polluting in vehicles, and all these are gradual shifts or small marginal gains in air quality improvements. So an overnight fix may well be a bypass road, or a restriction in traffic going in to fix it, but you want to be doing it in a manner that isn't just shifting the problem to somewhere else in terms of the traffic load. So I don't have a one to fix it straight away, Councillor Lockhart, but I think the fact that it's focused in those areas, the areas where we've declared air quality management areas, it forces our planners, our roads department, and anyone else who's developing or using those areas to be aware of that.
Okay, Richard.
Yeah, well, okay, fine, thanks. I mean, I know things are being done, but it is a major area of concern. That's all.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't see any other hands raised. I'm glad that this was only an item for noting, so I'm going to move the recommendation.
I'll second, Chair.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Right. I notice that there's no other business. Can I thank everyone for attending? It's always a good committee. We always get a lot of discussion, and hopefully some of the decisions that we take do make a difference to life here in South Lanarkshire. So thanks very much for everyone taking part. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks.